All right. Welcome to my very first live stream. I'm live streaming on YouTube and on LinkedIn at the same time. And I'm telling you, this is just an experiment. I've never done this before. I'm going through Ecamm. So if there's any technical glitches or if I'm not replying to your comments, please bear with me. I'm doing my best. So, welcome. My name is Shirley Engel. I'm a former television reporter turned entrepreneur, and I now help entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, course creators grow their businesses with video. And primarily, we do that through working on your on camera presence, working on your video storytelling techniques, which is the subject of today's live stream. So, I want to get right into it and talk about video storytelling 101 and why that is so important. And frankly, it's really not talked about enough because everybody's so busy using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI tool you're using to generate content. And listen, there's nothing wrong with using those tools. I use them too. But I find that people are falling into these repetitive ways of talking and following these scripts where AI is just regurgitating patterns that already exist out there. So a lot of the creativity is being lost because AI doesn't make stuff up, or ChatGPT often does, but generally the way that language models, these large language models are designed is they draw from existing sources to help you. And so what that means is a lot of people's content starts to sound the same because platforms like ChatGPT, they're using these patterns of speaking that are popular, right? So if you log on to LinkedIn, if you're watching on LinkedIn or if you're on YouTube and you're seeing the same kind of patterns like not this, not that, it's lists of things. You're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. There starts to become this predictable pattern that, frankly, for me, as a trained eye, I've started literally skimming past content like that. And also going past videos that talk about that talk like that, because it's just boring to me. It's so formulaic. It's what we're so used to seeing, right? So just making sure my mic is on. We're live here in case you didn't know that. So in today's live stream, I really wanted to drill down into this idea of video storytelling and what is that? What does video storytelling mean? And I called it Video Storytelling 101 because if you're an experienced storyteller, a lot of this stuff is going to be second nature to you. It's going to seem obvious. But I find even with things that I know well, it always helps to get a refresher, to hear someone explain the concepts maybe in a different way. So that's what I'm going to do today. And then once I'm done sort of giving you my thoughts on the video storytelling side, I'll take some questions, assuming I can figure out where to find the questions, because right now all I see is live, but I don't know where on YouTube that's happening. So I also want to just call up YouTube, and I have another screen here. And let's go to the live stream so that I can make sure that I'm answering your questions at the same time. So I'm going to be doing a presentation, and we're going to do that. I'm just going to go to content, and I'm going to call up the live in just a moment. But as I do that, and I'm going to make videos on how to go live on Ecamm because I think this is such an important skill. And I know that some of you are interested in live streaming. So this is my slide deck. I literally just toggled in Ecamm. I have the scenes. I don't quite know how to use them perfectly yet, so bear with me if it's not working out. But the main idea I really wanted to get across is that without stories, you're just regurgitating information, because the reality is that in 2026, when I'm recording this, information is free. So if all you're doing is going out there and talking about your niche and giving tips or giving information, well, that's great. I can also get that in an AI summary. You know that you can now look at summaries, AI summaries of YouTube videos. You don't even need to watch the YouTube video. You can just click on the AI summary and get the information. But you know what you can't get? You can't get the stories. You can't get the unique way that that person tells you that information if they're using video storytelling, which we're going to talk about shortly. then you can't really get that in a summary. You've got to watch the video to get that person's perspective. So that's your value. That's your value add. That's why people want to tune in and hear from you and learn from you, because you have that unique vantage point, that unique perspective. So let's talk a little bit about, okay, so what does video storytelling actually mean? Because I think one thing that a lot of people get hung up on, and one thing it doesn't mean, is getting all vulnerable and sharing traumatic experiences and getting super personal and revealing personal details that maybe you don't want the whole world to know. A lot of people are really concerned about privacy in 2026, and rightfully so. So am I. So, video storytelling, while you totally could share that stuff, and that's great stuff to share depending on your niche, you also don't have to share that stuff. And sometimes sharing super personal, vulnerable, traumatic stuff almost creates a disconnect with your viewer, because maybe they can't relate to that particular experience. And then instead of being able to relate to what you're saying, their feelings, well, they can feel empathy, they can feel other things. But ultimately, if your goal is to attract people, nurture them, and then eventually grow your business, then those kinds of stories have their place, but they're not your bread and butter every single day stories that can really create that connection and that commentary that we're all seeking to create on our channels. So people really relate to experiences, and that's what they're here for. They're here to hear you explain or share your knowledge and your tips or your experience, but they're here to hear your stories. They're here to learn from your experience. If you have a particular skill set, like, how did you come to that skill set? I often tell stories in my content about my days as a live television reporter, because I learned a lot doing that, and I apply that to how I approach video now. But I also share stories that are not so perfect. How when I moved from being a television reporter to being a business owner, I thought, oh, I'm good on camera. I've got this. Oh boy, was I in for a rude awakening, because I was in the trenches of content creation just like you. And I had to learn how to create content that would hook people, that would give people a reason to follow me, because so what? You were a TV reporter. I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to do. Like, what else can you teach me? And so that's really the skill set that I had to learn. So I draw on experience from both of those aspects of my journey. And in your journey, how are you relating your experience through stories to those of your viewer? Because if they can't feel you, if they can't really get that connection with you, the connection that I hope I'm creating with you through my content, then they can't trust you, right? And trust is the currency, especially in 2026, when there's AI avatars and AI everything. People are like, they want real. They want me fumbling with my YouTube studio, because, spoiler alert, I still haven't called up the comments section. And I'm stumbling as I talk, and that's totally, totally okay. Oh, here it is. Okay, let me click into this live stream. Ooh, I don't want that echo. See? So that's like me being real. And that's what people want, right? Is that what you want? You want to be real. Okay, so let's move on here. If I don't get to your comments, I promise I will look at that shortly. But let's talk about this 3-part framework that I promised, because if you were waiting for this live stream or you're watching the replay, you're like, okay, so show me, how do I do this? Every story boils down to 3 very simple things. The hook, which, has almost become this catch-all term for your introduction, your opening, the way you get people to actually be like, okay, I'm actually going to watch this thing. The context, which is when you explain, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And then the shift. And this is the critical part that I want you to take away from this. If there's nothing else that you take from this tutorial or this discussion about video storytelling, let it be that you must create a shift for your audience. And we'll talk about what the shift means, because there always has to be a moral of the story, right? Every good movie, every good book, every good, folk tale has that message, that moral of the story. So that's another way you can think of shift. So let's dive deeper into each of these things. I'll talk a little bit about hook and context and shift, and then we'll do some examples. And so the hook is, you've probably heard this before if you know about video marketing. It's, why should I care? This is those first few crucial seconds that make someone say, okay, you know what? I'm going to listen to her or I'm going to listen to him. And, a lot of hooks have become very clickbaity. And when it comes to video storytelling, yes, you want to be interesting. It's great to be disruptive and say something that people wouldn't normally say in your niche or about what you're doing. But you also want to make sure that it's human. And I think in this race to like have the best hooks and make sure you get that great, exact opener and model this pattern because this is what people want, I feel like a lot of people have lost their ability to tell stories that really hook people, right? And that's something that I think is going to be a challenge for a lot of us. And so while don't worry about, using AI to come up with hooks, I think it's great. I do it too. I always encourage people to try to write it yourself first. Try to really just stop and come from that place. Like, how do I start this story? Right. And, that doesn't mean you have to say like once upon a time or I was at the store the other day. You do want to give it something a little bit sexier before that, and then you can get into the story. But your hook is a way to get people to really understand what they're going to be hearing. So sometimes you're teasing that shift at the beginning of your hook. So you're saying, one of the ways that I really was humbled by video was when I made the transition from a reporter to an entrepreneur, right? So I'm about to tell you a story about that, but I also set it up in a way that was like, oh yeah, you know what? I wonder how that went. Rather than just saying, when I transitioned from reporter to entrepreneur, like you don't really get the same like, oh, there's something in this for me. Because at the end of the day, I'm just going to take a sip of water. At the end of the day, like, no offense, but it's not about you. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget. Like, people are coming to you, but they're coming to you because there's something in it for them, right? You wouldn't be watching this live stream if you weren't interested in learning about video storytelling. You probably don't care much about my story from reporter to entrepreneur. Maybe you do, but it's not like the primary reason you're tuning in. You want to get something out of it, right? Well, so does your viewer. So as you're thinking about how you're going to hook your viewer into your video, into the story you're going to tell, you do want to drop them into the story, but you can do so in a way that you kind of pull them in and make them want to watch, right? So think about things that are specific. Be honest. I love disruptive hooks because I think that they're sort of that pattern interrupt of like, whoa, I started a video the other day. Maybe you watched it on my channel. If not, go check it out about teleprompters and how I hate teleprompters. And I experimented with a few different ways of, how do I want to get into this video instead of just saying, you shouldn't use teleprompters because blah, blah, blah. Spoiler alert, I don't like them. I'm not using one right now. And hopefully you can tell. But I said something disruptive, like if you're using a teleprompter, it's like watching you in reading a hostage ransom note or reading a ransom note in a hostage video or something. I totally just butchered that. Something to that effect, like why is she talking about hostages and ransom notes? But did that not, even though I kind of butchered the way I delivered it, did that not create something like a scene in your mind? What we want to do is we want to set the scene in the mind, right? We want it to be human. That leads me into the context. So this is where you're like, whoa, wait a second, hostage, ransom note. That was just a metaphor, right? So then you want to really set the scene. You want to start explaining the story. You're getting right into it. I was at the store the other day and I was in line and this woman was in front of me and she was fumbling with her wallet and the guy behind me was screaming at her to hurry up. And maybe that's a story that you're going to talk about patience, or you're going to talk about, something that then happened that cause that person behind you to learn a lesson or something like that. So this is where you tell the story. This is where you give that context. But remember that we don't want to go off on tangents and be like, oh, and this was a big store and I usually go to this store and I love the selection of produce. Like, who cares? Stay on message. So when you give your context, the biggest guidance I can give you when it comes to video storytelling is that you want to make sure that you still keep your eye on the ball. Because this is where so many people go wrong with video storytelling. They start veering off into tangents because they didn't plan what they were going to say. right? So while you'll hear me say this in other videos if you watch or if you're in my MOV Pro client group, I really am a proponent of creating structure in your videos, right? You really want to make sure you script the top, script the bottom, but then in the middle, you want to leave some room for magic. That doesn't mean that you go in without a plan. So when you're setting the scene, when you're giving context, just make sure, ask yourself, everything you're going to talk about, is this helping me move the story forward? And if it doesn't, why is it there? I don't care that the produce is a good price at the store. What does that actually have to do with the guy behind me in line, right? So in your own example, think about that. Okay, you're going to give context of your story, but make sure every line has its place because this is where the retention comes in, right? You want to give just enough detail for the person to create that picture. So when I talked about the hostage video and reading a ransom note, you probably had this vision of like a person with a white wall behind them and they're like super kind of buttoned up and that was the image I was trying to get you to imagine when it comes to reading from a teleprompter, right? So let's talk a little bit about the shift now. And I want to give you my thoughts on this. So this is really when you ask yourself the question, what changed? What's the lesson? What is the person going to take from this? And ideally, if you're doing your job, this relates back to whatever it is that you're offering as a business owner, right? So, when I talk about the shift from reporter to entrepreneur, and I'm giving you that story and how I stumbled and how I had to learn and grow my audience just like everyone else. The shift is that I learned how to do that. And now I can teach you how to do that too, with the added benefit of having all these years of television reporting experience that I can layer in, right? So do you see what I mean? Like this is where you start to bring a little bit of the why are people here and what can you help them with? How can you support them? And I want to be clear here. This isn't about selling or being salesy, right? Yes, maybe you have a product to offer, but the mindset that I encourage you to be in here is of being of service, right? Being of assistance to people, because at the end of the day, selling is service, right? Yes, you have a business to run and you are here because, you want to earn a living, but you're doing that by really helping people and supporting them. And that is the exchange that's happening rather than, oh gosh, I want them to buy this thing. And how do I make a connection between this story and this thing? Like, just be human, right? Why does that person need it? We're not convincing people. We're just offering people a way to get closer to their goals, to what they want. So when you think about it that way, and this was a shift that I had to learn, and I'm literally telling it to you as I'm showing you about video storytelling, but this is a shift that I had to learn. And so when you think about it that way, your stories will be so much more authentic. So, and here, let me just this is interesting about Ecamm. Now I got to move this over. There we go. There we go. Live and in the moment. This is where the message really lands, guys. Here's a tip for you. If you're making slides, you want to make sure that they're narrow enough that you can actually toggle between them in Ecamm. So there you go. That's where the message lands. So stories build that trust without selling, right? So yeah, I mean, you are also, and I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger again. You are definitely in a way like you are selling, but you're not there to just be salesy, if that makes sense. And I can't seem to figure out how to make this bigger. So we're just going to go on. Without stories, your audience doesn't need you guys. They can just go to ChatGPT. Okay, so let's talk about this, which might be on your mind, which is, okay, but surely I don't have stories, in my niche. I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to make it relatable. Well, I got you. And I am going to challenge that belief because we all have stories. And this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, which is that, you think your stories have to be these epic, really, deep stories, but actually the stories that really will grab people the most are the ones that you find in your photo library on your iPhone, right? Open your phone and scroll through your photos. Something will jog your memory. It's in the mundane every day. You were dropping your kids off at school. You were at the grocery store. You were making dinner the other day. You were reading a book, you were listening to a podcast. I mean, it doesn't have to be like, depending on your niche, obviously, it doesn't have to be this like, you know, regular everyday life thing. It could also be, I went to this concert, like whatever it is that you want to teach or you want to share. Think of a story that relates to that and think about those pivotal moments in your life, in your week, in your day that really helped you grow, that helped you take the stuff that you're an expert in and really apply it. Think about failure. When were times in your life that you didn't succeed, right? When were those times that you stumbled, that you fell on your face, that maybe things didn't go the way you wanted? People love stories like that. I love stories like that. I'm full of stories like that, so stay tuned. So those are just some ideas for you. Let me give you some prompts that will help you kind of workshop this because I do want you to, whoops. Okay, well, we got to get that back. I have some questions that I wanted you guys to be able to, and this is where lives are. I'm going to show you how I handle things when they don't go right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to I'm going to get rid of this. Hi. Okay. So if you're live streaming, by the way, and things don't go your way and you're like, oh my God, my slides disappeared. You see how I'm like not panicking? I'm just going to call up my slides and I'm going to talk about them like a normal human being. So where we were here, I wanted to give you some prompts, some questions that you can ask yourself as you are thinking about your stories. Because as I become more proficient with Ecamm, this will not happen. So thank you for bearing with me. What almost stopped you today? So think about, a moment in your life where you were like in the middle of something and you just stopped. What was that? That could be a story. What did you learn the hard way? Is there something that you, and I gave you my example, but is there something that you really didn't know, but you had to learn the hard way? Or maybe people had told you and you knew intuitively, but you had to experience it in order to really learn it the hard way. Talk to me about meta ads. There's whole stories there about, that learning the hard way part. And maybe if you're someone who uses advertising, you also have a story about that. What did I used to believe that I don't believe anymore? And after this live stream, I'm going to go into the comments section, into the description, and I'll put these questions in there because I couldn't put them on the screen so that you can use them to jog your memory as you go through this. What would have helped me 1, 3, 6 months ago? Are there any stories that, I wish that I had known about this? So I'll give you an example, and I'm going to be creating a YouTube video about this. If you're a YouTube enthusiast, YouTube just released an AI studio that is incredible, that has been so helpful. I wish I had that 3 months ago, but now that I have it, I can teach you how to use it. And then I could go into a story about, a time that I was like completely void of any ideas. I wanted to post to YouTube and I just didn't know what to do. Or, I wanted to learn from my analytics. This is something my MOV students are always really working on, is those results. Like, how do I make sure that I tie the videos that I create to an ROI, to a return on investment? So that's like an example. So I wanted to show you examples of hooks that, I'm going to turn that off. Where are the slides? Here we go. Okay. I got them back. Yes. Okay, just put myself on here and put these back on. Where did they go? Oh, okay. Well, we're going to finish here with me on camera then. So I wanted to give you examples of a hook. So a hook could be, I almost didn't show up live today because look what a hot mess this live stream is, right? I almost didn't show up because I didn't know how to use Ecamm and to go live. And I didn't have time because I was dropping off my daughter and I had to race home to do this live stream, but I had committed to live streaming every Friday on YouTube in 2026, unless I was away or out of town or something or sick. And then I decided, you know what? I'm just going to do it anyway because I want to get those reps in. I want to learn this. I want to get better at this, right? I almost didn't show up live today. The context is what I just talked about. All of those examples that I mentioned, all of the information that I gave after that. And then the shift is, but I realized that's exactly why I needed to go live today, because I needed to have this experience. Ooh, you better believe I'm going to be looking up on YouTube how to make sure that you can share your slides while you're talking. What's the best way to toggle? How do I see my comments while I'm going live? Like, I just gave you a whole story about going live on YouTube. And I could have just come on here and been like, here's how you go live on YouTube. You press this button, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then you're live. But wasn't it so much better with me actually showing you what a train wreck this was? And it doesn't feel like a train wreck to me because I went live so much. But maybe if you're someone who's, just getting into live, this could be incredibly intimidating. So, just know that you can turn failures or setbacks into great stories. So better stories are going to help you connect better with your viewers. They're going to give you a stronger on-camera presence because you're going to get used to rolling with the punches like I just did. They're going to give you higher resonance with your viewers because people who really appreciate real and authentic are going to tune into your stuff more. And hopefully I'll see you more on my Friday lives. And please do, in the comments on this video, if you're watching the replay, request topics you want me to talk about. And of course, at the end of the day, more impact. That is what we're after here. So I wanted to leave you with a couple of ideas for where you can farm your mind or farm your business for ideas on where you can find these stories. So client conversations, make fabulous stories. They're also testimonials, which hint, hint, help with what you're offering. Moments of doubt that you had, issues like I'll be telling this story of how I went live on YouTube and LinkedIn for the first time through Ecamm and lost my slides. Small wins, the fact that I recovered, got back on the bike and kept talking to you live. Awkward moments, enough said, doesn't need any explanations. And things that surprised you and frustrated you. So hopefully those things kind of jog your memory a little bit, give you some food for thought on how you can use video storytelling in your own journey. Now I'm going to try and find the comments. So this part is going to be the really messy live stuff that happens when you are figuring this stuff out live. But if you have a question, please put it in the comments. I'm going to call this up onto my screen here, and I'm going to try and figure this out. Bear with me. I'm going to go to content in my studio. And hopefully, as I'm talking, as I'm going through this and doing this, I would love to know what it is that you are struggling with. And if we don't manage to do it in the live conversation, then let's definitely, and I'm going to mute myself here. Sorry. Let's see. Oh, there are some comments. Oh, guys, you're awesome. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Do any of you have any questions on video storytelling? Do you need to say, let me okay, so Cindy, I'm seeing your comments now. Thank you very much. If you're still here, you're still around. You're asking, when you start to tell a story, do you need to say, let me tell you a story? No, do not say, let me tell you a story. Unless, if you're going live and it's off the cuff, like that doesn't really hook me. Let me tell you a story about what? Wouldn't it be better, Cindy, to start with just get into it, drop into it? People are really busy. So what you're looking for is people to kind of turn their head and say, oh, what is that? Right? So that will be an interesting way to get people in, a more interesting way than let me tell you a story. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that for someone who doesn't know you, I would need to know, why do I want to know a story from you? Right? The question I want you to ask yourself every single time is, why should I care? That's like the question that should govern all of your video storytelling is, why should I care? Do you have a hack? Oh, do you have a hack to get people to actually watch our video story instead of the AI summary? Excellent question, Richard. So that is where your stories come in, literally. You show up, you're human. You saw me fumbling around with my slides. AI might say, she fumbles with slides. I don't know. I don't really read the AI summaries, but like that in itself might be like, oh, I wonder what that looks like. People love watching, people learning or doing things in real time. So part of it, Richard, is getting known for something. So people might not automatically watch if they don't know you, but you're going to build an audience over time by showing up, by putting in the reps, by being consistent. And if you tell stories in your content all the time, you're training your audience to come and listen or to play the video because they're like, well, I really want to hear his story. He always has such good stories. Or, oh, that happened to me, right? And if you want people to comment on your videos rather than saying like and subscribe and comment, which hopefully by now we don't do on YouTube, tell your story and say, has this ever happened to you? Let me know in the comments. Have you guys ever totally stumbled in a live stream? Tell me in the comments, for real. I want to know. So hopefully that helps. There are some other comments. You Zimbabwean who resides in Ireland. Welcome, welcome. So that's another tip, by the way, that I picked up from a really great eCam creator named Adrian Salisbury. Hopefully I'm not messing up that name. He said, don't spend time like saying, oh, hi, John, welcome to the live stream. And because think about it, people are watching after the fact, and we're well into this live stream. If you're still watching the replay now, like you're invested. So, but when you're starting your live stream, if you're doing this live, like just get into it, right? So there you go. You can do that. What's the story with the hair change again, Alec? Thank you for asking. Very good question. So it is freezing in Ottawa, like freezing. And I had to drop off my daughter this morning, and the curly hair takes time to dry. It's wet. So I needed to have dry hair. So I just blow dried it. But going forward, you might see it like this. Sometimes you might see it curly. So hopefully both work for you. Amazing. Lots of comments coming in now. And by the way, like at this point if you're doing a live stream, while I said don't start by saying, hey, John, hey, Alec, by this point, when you've gone through what you were going to say, absolutely you can engage. Okay, got it. Very good. What's the story? Oh, we already did that. There are several storytelling frameworks. Are they targeted for different purposes? Excellent question, Alex. So, this will require its own storytelling video, and I will be doing storytelling videos on my channel because you guys are requesting them. You guys want to hear more about video storytelling. I would say the one that I presented today, the hook, context shift, or moral of the story, is a really good overarching framework for you because you can slot in other micro frameworks into that, but they're all going to start and end with that, right? Whether you're giving a keynote on a stage, you're doing a video, you're doing a live stream, you want to get people to watch, you want to give them the context, and then you want them to get a moral of the story. So I think that's why I wanted to distill this down to such a simple 3-step video storytelling 101 framework, because I think it's a good guide for you no matter what kind of stories you're telling or what type of broadcast you're doing. Let's see. I started a channel and stopped before I could get far enough. When I saw your videos, I thought, let me sit down and learn before I go any further. Oh my gosh, that's the biggest compliment. I love that. Thank you so, so much. By the way, if you're watching on LinkedIn, I cannot see the LinkedIn comments, but I will go in and respond to them later. So, this was my first live stream. Let me know how I did, and hopefully you will tune in on Fridays. I'm going to post some polls in the community section in my posts so that I can just learn, like, what other things do you want to chat about? And as we go through this live stream experience, I'm committing to showing up live every Friday in 2026. I also want to get into some content feedback. So if you're someone who's putting out content, you'd love some feedback, let me know, and I'll call that up on my live streams and we can chat about it. Once again, I talk about everything from what to say, so storytelling, messaging, how to say it, so camera confidence, presenting, becoming magnetic on video, how to speak to a camera, and then also how to create buzz, because I have that media and public speaking experience. So those are sort of the 3 big buckets that we talk about on this channel. And, I do create videos on all those things and would love to do live streams on all of those things. Hero's journey. Yes. Okay, cool. Lots and lots of ideas here, which I will definitely go through. Most helpful storytelling advice you've ever seen, Richard. Amazing. So glad. I will be back with more. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining me live, or if you're watching on the replay and you've made it this far, you get an A plus in this. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be here with you guys. Excited to engage with you more. And yeah, just keep the comments coming. Let me know what you want me to talk about. I'm here to create for you guys. And so, however I can be of service to you, that is what lights me up. And that's what I want to do. So have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Check out the videos on my channel if you want to learn more about video storytelling, camera presence, and all those good things. See you next week.